Hi, everybody. We're back. Jack Olesker. Again, if you want to get additional information on me, you can go to my website, jackolesker.com. So, yes, I am wearing the same shirt that I wore in the previous episode, and there's a reason for that. We're doing this two back to back because there's a couple of things I want to follow up on. So, I want you to understand how I do these episodes. I don't script this out. I don't decide all the things I'm going to talk about. Sometimes I have a few little ideas, but I don't script it out. This is extemporaneous. So it's just me chatting with you. And after I finish each episode, Kim downloads it to me. I take a look at it. And, usually I'm like 95% happy with everything I'm looking at. And once in a while, I'll see a couple of things that I think can be improved. And one of the things that I thought could be improved in the last episode that I did, I get very passionate and emphatic when it comes to my industry and talking about it. And I think I was a little bit over the top when I said you have to move to LA to get into the business. It's not true, okay? Yeah, I always look at your best possible path. Now, unquestionably, in my mind, your best possible path is to move out to Los Angeles and do those things that I told you in the last episode. But there is a way to get into the industry without doing that. You can write for PBS locally. You can write commercials. You can get involved with local television if you're a writer, if you're a producer, if you're an actor, okay? Aisha Hasni, who is a correspondent for Fox News, I really think she's fantastic. She's spot on, very polished. She started out in Fort Wayne, Indiana, okay? So I don't know if she was on television there. I'm guessing she probably was. But you can start out on local television, build yourself a little portfolio, and then if you decide you want to move out to LA, then you can do that. There's some people that have been very happy working on local television all their lives. There's nothing wrong with that. So I wanted to make a little course correction regarding that. I think it's important to talk about that. Also, by the way, I mentioned the film quiz show. I was incorrect when I said off the top of my head that Barry and Enright were the producers of that. No, they were the producers of the quiz show 21, which is what that movie was about. So just a little course correction there. So I want to talk today, as promised, about ways to breaking into the industry, specifically my way, okay? And again, as I said, everybody has a different path, but this is the path that happened for me. When I got out to LA, I started working, as I told you, as an extra, making $35 a day. And then I happened to see a want ad for a associate editor at Entrepreneur magazine in Santa Monica. Which wasn't far from where I was living. So I applied for it, and fortunately, my business background, having worked in my parents' clothing store for years, that helped a lot with Entrepreneur magazine, because one of the things they did was publish manuals that showed people how to get into different industries. Car industry, clothing industry, insurance industry, and they analyzed those industries. So I got hired there, and that was one of my jobs, to write those manuals and get involved with editing the magazine. I enjoyed it a lot. Gosh, I was making all of $350 a week, but I was writing, so I really enjoyed that. And there was a fella that I worked with, Ron Smith, and we kind of struck up a friendship. He was a nice guy, very gentle kind of a fella. And he had a script writing credit, a film actually, to his credit. It was called Clonus, The Parts Horror. And it was about this secret organization that was harvesting body parts and selling them. It was a gruesome novel. But he got the novel produced and distributed, which in Los Angeles, that's really an achievement if you can do that. So we got to be kind of friends. We got to be good friends, actually. And he introduced me a couple people, one of whom was Ray Dryden, who was a producer that had produced a film called The Attic with Carrie Snodgrass and Ray Milland. And, those are pretty good name stars. And Ray and I struck up a friendship as well. Years later, I would use him for writing some episodes of the series Mask that I'll talk about down the line. And Ray and I got to be good friends. And Ray, I believe it was Ray or Ron, I'm not sure, but one of them introduced me to a guy named Pat Bailey. And Pat, I'm sure he still is, he was an attorney. He did a lot of work in the airline industry. He was a pilot himself. And because you're in LA, he got involved in producing. Well, Pat produced a film called Space Camp with Kate Capshaw. And it was about these kids. This actual space camp exists in Alabama. These kids go there every summer. And this one summer, somehow or other, they ignited this space shuttle, and the thing actually takes off. And the cut line on the poster was, "Just what you thought could never happen with the space shuttle." Well, as timing would have it, they sent out all the posters. They were ready to release the film, and they were ready to release it a week before the Endeavour crash. Tragic crash of a space shuttle. And of course, they had to pull everything back. But Pat and I got to know each other. Another great guy, a real gentleman in an industry that has far too few. And Pat asked me, he knew my writing background, my novels. He said, "Would you like to start writing commercials?" He says, "I know you've got military background in the Air Force." He says, "We're doing commercials for AFRTS, the Armed Forces Radio and Television Service." I said, "Hey, I'd love to do that. I'm used to long form, 600-page novels rather than a 30-second script." But I said, "Sure, I'll take a shot at it." So he hired me, and I go out to this mansion in Beverly Hills, and it's owned by a fella named Noel Blank. And Noel, another great guy, I'm having a good run of meeting nice people. Noel was, or is, the son of legendary animation voiceover artist Mel Blanc. Daffy Duck, Bugs Bunny, Pepe Le Pew, Yosemite Sam. And Noel had his own production company that did all of these AFRTS commercials, and he did promos and films, documentaries for different colleges. A really interesting fellow. And I'm sitting there at a desk and I'm writing all these things. And I really kind of enjoyed that. And I did that for about 6 months, and I was making pretty good money and starting to get moving along. And I'm living in a building in Studio City, California, out in the valley. And it's a condo building. And there's a lot of soap stars in the building. Bob Eubanks, who used to be the host for The Dating Game, lived in there. And there's a couple of soap stars. Todd Curtis, great fella, who played Geordie Clegg on the soap opera Capital, lived in the building. We got to be good friends too. And I'm living in the building and starting to, get my traction. And there's this one fella that lives in the building. He's a French guy, quiet guy. He wore round glasses and straight hair, kind of looked like John Lennon. And he's living with this beautiful Japanese girl. And we used to joke it was John and Yoko. And I didn't know anything about this guy. And somebody in the building decided to have a party, and everybody was invited. And we're standing out by the pool, and there's drinks and appetizers. It's very nice. And Jean comes up to me, and fortunate I speak French, so I'm fluent in French, so we were able to communicate really well. And I'm also talking to him in English, and he spoke broken English, but more than adequate. And he says to me, I understand that you write novels. And I said, yeah, I do. I said, I have a bestseller. MGM bought the film rights to it. And I've got a second one that I'm getting ready to market now. And he said, I'm starting an animation studio in Studio City. We're over a beauty shop. And I'm doing something different. And you got to remember, this is in the early 80s. And back in the 80s and before that, in animation, there were no real scripts, with the exception of the Jetsons and, the Flintstones. The animation series, like Wile E. Coyote and Bugs Bunny and Daffy Duck, the animation artists would write a few lines of dialogue. There was no real scripts. And Jean, who was a visionary and one of my three great mentors, I've already talked about one of my other great mentors, Haim Saban, my dear friend. But Jean really was one of my great mentors, and I'll talk about the third one eventually in another episode. And Jean said, I want to do something different. I want these animation series that I'm doing to have real stories, storylines, be subplots, develop the characters fully. And I said, gee, that sounds very interesting. He said, would you be interested in taking a shot at it? And I said, I write murder mysteries and horror novels. I said, I just don't think that that's really something for me. It was one of those moments when I woke up at 3 o'clock in the morning and I wanted to take the words and just shove them back in my mouth. What was I thinking? What could I possibly have been thinking? So the next morning I go and I knock on Jean's door and I said, I thought about it overnight and I think I might want to take a shot at writing for animation. And we went out that day to a nice sushi restaurant in Studio City, and we sat and we talked. And he said, I'm going to give you a shot. He says, you'll try to write for a series that I have called The Littles. And I know you write mostly for novels. He says, but I'll take you along and I'll show you the way to write for television. So I had my first mentor. And in years to come, we became such dear friends, and we correspond all the time. He lives in the Bahamas now, spends some time in China with his wonderful wife, Ethel. And we just became dear, dear friends. And one of the things that I think made it for me, Mark Taylor, not the artist Mark Taylor, but the guy that basically ran Nickelodeon for many years, was his CFO. And Mark and I talked once, and he said, you know why Jean loves you? And he said, he loves you because you do for him what nobody else will do. You are on for him 24/7. You are always there for him. I said, I sleep with my phone on my bedside table. I said, if he needs to reach me at 3 o'clock in the morning, I'm there. He said, Jean calls you l'animal, the animal. And that's what I am. Another nickname in the industry, they call me the postman because I always deliver. But I had to get that first break. I had to get the door open. And part of it is placing yourself in a position where you are open to finding people that can help you, especially in LA. You can't do it yourself. So remember what I said. Yeah, you can start out on the local level, working for PBS, working for a local television station. You don't have to move to LA, but that is your best possible path. I'm going to close with Jack's tip jar, okay? I want you to pick up a book that you'll really enjoy. It's by Ben Stein, former speechwriter. There we go. For Richard Nixon, went on to have a career in television. He had a show called When Ben Stein's Money. Funny guy, very dry sense of humor. And he wrote a book called Dreams, Dreemz, long out of print, as all of my books are. If you want one of my books, you can get the title on my website and just type in Jack Olesker and then Beyond Forever or Siege the Superport. You'll see all my books are out of print. You can get them for $2 or $3. But get Ben Stein's books, Dreams, and he talks about his journey going from being Richard Nixon's speechwriter to moving out to Los Angeles. And it's quite an interesting and fascinating journey. So I hope your journey is a fascinating and interesting one as well. I look forward to seeing you in the next episode. You have a great day.